The City of St. Pete Beach to order. Today's Tuesday, April 8th, 2025. It is 6 p.m. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Marriott?
Here.
Commissioner Robinson?
Here.
Commissioner Resnicki?
Here.
Vice Mayor Mulholland?
Here.
Mayor Petrilla?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. All right. First, we have presentations. Solid waste financial forecast. Who would like to tackle this exciting topic?
Good morning, good morning, good afternoon, Commissioners. So my name is Paul Sack. I'm the Director for Solid Waste with Pinellas County Government. Extended the invitation to your representative for our Technical Management Committee, which is the committee that's the advisory committee to the Board of County Commissioners for all things solid waste. We had a rate recommendation study that's been performed. We do that every year. We extended the opportunity to come and speak with any of the municipalities that wanted to understand better, the purpose of the study and why we're moving on with that. So I asked that the presentation that you have as a read ahead is actually done by our rate consultant, which is Raftellus. So I'm not the rate consultant, so I really can't provide you a presentation, that they provided. But I can give you background as to where we are, why we do the study, and the purpose of going forward with the rate recommendations, if you so desire. If not, if you have questions about the presentation that was a read ahead, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you may have on that presentation. So I'm not sure what the desire of the commission would be.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, any questions or comments?
Any background as far as what you would want to know as far as why we want, or why the board is requesting a change or an increase in the rate? You want any background or history with any of that?
Sure.
Yes, please.
Okay. So when the waste energy facility, which is our mass burn incinerator, which takes that garbage and turns it into energy for homes, that is sold currently now on the open market, was to Duke Energy for the longest time. We had a power purchase agreement with Duke Energy for 30 years that expired at the end of 2024. It was a very lucrative agreement that was put in place. It was definitely advantageous for the county, and by the time that agreement expired, it represented about 55% of the revenue that was coming into the solid waste fund, which is an enterprise fund, meaning that all the monies that are generated, revenues generated, are used for that operation. No tax dollars go into the solid waste fund. So recognizing that, going back to 2019, we saw that we were coming to that so-called cliff where we would lose that revenue source. Our only other opportunity for revenue or opportunities are the sale of electricity, which is minuscule in the amount of, compared to the 55% loss in the capacity payments that we would receive. The other revenue that is significant or more significant is actually the tipping fee, which is the amount paid by the ton that's coming across the scales to the facility for material to be disposed. So from the 1980s through 2019, the rate has stayed the same. It was almost 30 years that rate had not been affected. It was, I think, 37 for the longest time. In 2019, we put a plan together or a strategy looking at forward as to what we can do to help mitigate any significant increases all at once, for our municipalities and our customers coming through. So we projected and we put a strategy in place where we're going to start increasing our rates in around the 6-7% range for a longer period of time. Now recognize we haven't done it for 30 years. We needed some time to catch up. And we know that even if we were to do that for a long period of time, we still would be behind as far as the expenses that are going on for disposal of all the waste when you're looking at waste energy, landfill, and the operations around that. So looking with those rate increases that were being proposed at the time of about 6.5%, the plan was that we would use the reserves from the solid waste fund almost like a rate stabilization fund to kind of fill that gap. And that's what we're doing. So the rates have been increasing, like I said, started at about 6.5%. This year, what's gone to the board is 8%. And the reasons for those changes are really the increase in what we saw with, the economy, the increases that we're seeing with going out and going with a new provider or a new operator of waste energy, and then just the CPI increases that we have for operations, all the way around what's happening with solid waste. The new fee, if it goes through at 8% for the next 3 years, would put us in the like $60, $62 range. When compared to other counties within the state that operate waste energy facilities, we're still way below the median because it's been so long since we've increased our rates. But we will stay on that path of increase. But again, I think when compared to others in the industry and what we're seeing for the value of what's being provided, I think the board recognizes that, and that's what they're probably going to move forward with and approve. Now, they only adopt one-year budgets, probably similar to the commission here. But we did ask for 3 years at least, so everybody, all the municipalities, the private haulers and whatnot, could at least have it on their forecast for what they could expect unless there are changes that may happen between now and then. And that may be. We know that we're going to, we're on the street now for a new operator for the waste energy facility. Those changes could be higher or lower than what's forecast. Right now, that operator increased their cost by almost 50% and in the last year, which is why we're going out on the street. So we think that they'll come in less than that. We have other parties that are interested in operating that facility, and that's what's kind of been forecasted into the budget. If for some reason those numbers come in higher than what's forecasted, then next year when we do our rate study, which we do annually, then those numbers may shift a little bit, but I don't think they would shift dramatically. So that's kind of where we are. If there's questions on any of that, I'd be happy to answer those questions too. But that's the strategy that we see it, and we recognize, disposal is traditionally about a third of the solid waste component when you look at collection, with your labor, your transportation, your fleet, and then you have the disposal piece. When it comes to our facility, we have to dispose of it. We either incinerate it or we burn it. We don't recycle anything. We try to work with everybody to divert and recycle before, the material gets to us. Once it gets to us, we got to deal with it.
Since we're not able to get the presentation up on the screen for everyone else to see, what kind of rate increase should?
So the 8% increase that's being proposed, when you look at it from a dollar standpoint, to the average citizen that has a single-family home that generates about 1 ton of garbage per year, that equates to about $4.50 a ton. So you'd be looking at $4.50 more for disposal costs for your solid waste across Pinellas County. So on a monthly basis, you can divide that by 12. You can see it's much less than that.
Certainly.
So that would be $4.50 for 26, an additional $4.50 or $4.60 for 27, or for 27 and 28.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions, comments? Commissioner Mulholland.
Sir, just a little out of left field. So the debris removal from the hurricanes for all of Pinellas County, does that have any impact on any of this at all?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for being here. Next, we have a presentation on the budget calendar 25-26.
Mayor and Commission, Devin Schmidt, our new finance director, who is online right now, will be providing the presentation, and we do have a PowerPoint. Devin, we don't have audio.
Is it our end?
No, still no audio.
Check your laptop. It might be your computer itself that you have off.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Now I can't hear you. Give me 1 second. I apologize. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you hear us?
Okay. I can't hear you for some reason. How about now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect, excellent. Apologies for the technical difficulties. Mayor and Commission, Devin Schmidt, Finance Director, and wanted to take the opportunity to bring the Commission through our FY 2026 proposed budget calendar, as well as a Finance Budget Committee scope of work and recommendation. For strategic alignment, this aligns with our internal operations currently. To our next slide. Okay, so just to set the stage a little bit here, so when we're discussing the budget, I really believe that it's one of the most important items that a commission approves every year. And the reasons behind that is it really sets the annual spending limits for the city services. It's essential for performing those services and completing those capital projects. It reflects commission goals and community priorities, so incorporating the needs of the community, whether that's a service or a capital improvement project. It's a storytelling document about what the city plans to accomplish in a one-year term, and it highlights some of those key capital projects and services that are expected to be completed in that given year. In addition, all services and capital projects are initiated throughout the budget, and the budget is that starting point for planning and implementation is what we're looking to accomplish in that next cycle of the year. So just wanted to set the stage with that information for the commission. So a little bit of changes. From what I understand, in prior years, there's been a 1 year or one day retreat with the commission to go over the budgetary information. So what staff is proposing for the changes this year, staff will continue to initiate the budget process. The next step, should commission approve this process, would be that the Finance Budget Committee reviews that budget recommendation from staff. And then the commission would receive a recommendation from the Finance Budget Review Committee. From there, the commission would then have a budget workshop format. So instead of it being a 4 to 8 hour long day where we're going through all the budget, we're proposing to break that up into 5 different work sessions with the commission. After each work session, the commission could provide some recommended changes that you all would like to see, and then staff would go ahead and implement those recommendations, and we would continue this process 5 different times for each workshop. What this does is it creates a lot of opportunities for community engagement through the workshops as well as through the budget review committee. And then finally, we would land at commission approval later in September on that final budget document. So this is the biggest task list, of course, because this is what staff is going to be working on to deliver that budget. So I won't go through every single item on here. But you can see that the department heads have started working on the process for that next year capital budget forms. After that is completed, then we would kick off to bring that to the Finance Budget Review Committee. And I have these broken out in a little bit greater detail on each of the upcoming slides. But after capital, we would look to bring our personnel and some of those benefit positions overviews. We would bring our operating back to the Finance Budget Review Committee, and then we would bring that to commission in the workshop format. While we're doing all of that, we're working closely as a team to prepare the budget, to make sure that it's balanced, that we're getting all those community priorities reflected throughout the budget. And then we would get towards that final adoption piece later in September, as I mentioned. So if we take a moment to kind of dive into what staff is recommending for a scope for the Finance Budget Review Committee, starting with the purpose of what the charter states is that they can provide recommendations to the City Commission on financial budget matters in accordance with the city charters. The process would be for the 26 budget to go through each one of those workshops, review the information that staff has proposed, and then act as an advisory role offering recommendations without any regulatory or policy oversight. So that would, of course, land with the commission. So that would provide a recommendation to the commission after each one of those workshops. The objective behind this is to ensure that the budget process is transparent, efficient, aligned with community priorities, and then creates another opportunity for community engagement throughout the budget process instead of at that one-day retreat option. So this would be the proposed Finance Budget Review Committee meetings and some of the work plan items. So starting off in May, they would, with that budget workshop number 1, they would take a look at what staff has prepared for historical financial overviews, what is our revenue analysis, and then what are we projecting out for our capital improvement plan for that 1-year cycle. After that, they would be looking at an updated capital improvement plan and position listing and benefits overview. So after we've done an initial blush at that capital improvement plan, that would come back again. And then we would have the preliminary budget for the Finance Budget Review Committee in July, in that first meeting there. And then later in July, they would take a look at some of those ad valorem tax analysis, the preliminary budget book, and any summary of changes that have occurred since that initial preliminary budget was put out. And then finally, at that budget workshop number 5, they would receive the tentative budget book and summary of changes from the previous versions. And so with each one of these steps, they would be able to provide the commission with a recommendation that has some additional information that agrees with what staff has prepared, or some areas that they would recommend that staff changes for commission consideration. And then finally, when we're looking at the commission budget workshops and some of those community engagements, we were looking to propose stacking those meetings, essentially starting those at maybe 4:30 to 5:45 p.m. when there's already an existing commission meeting scheduled. So this would be the same information broken out in those workshops. The difference is that you would have a recommendation from that financial budget review committee, and you would be able to see, here's what staff prepared, this is what the financial budget committee has recommended, and we would be breaking it out into a little bit more digestible bits and pieces of the budget as we go through that process. And then finally, we would get to, in September, that millage and budget adoption, our first public hearing and our second public hearing. But we would have been able to include all of that community engagement throughout the process as we work through the budget. So with that, I'd be happy to open it up to any questions.
Hi, Devin. Just going back to the last slide, please. You mentioned that those dates were to coincide with commission meetings, but I'm looking at almost all of those are on a Wednesday, and I understand that 2 in September have to be on different dates opposite some of the county meetings, but just want to make sure that we have the correct dates on the schedule here.
I think those are wrong.
I can certainly reconfirm those dates. I do understand that the dates in September are a little bit different based on noticing procedures. and ensuring that we're not conflicting with other, the school district and the county.
So I see what the discrepancy is. Your slide is different than what we have in our presentation.
Yeah.
Are the dates up on the screen correct? I think we did have a last-minute change and correction for after
All of
we
them.
published.
All of them are different.
Okay, so the ones that are up there right now are the correct, and we'll correct the file. Madam Clerk, if you could upload this presentation into the record after this meeting.
Okay, thank you. That makes more sense.
Mayor, I just want to be able to mention, because when we decided this calendar, and this is for the record, the July 8th date was already on my calendar as vacation, so that was one that we said, well, I would just miss that commission meeting, but now I'm also going to be missing a budget workshop. So I just want to, I don't know if it happened to anybody. I know we had a lot of talks about who had off and so forth back then.
I have the same conflict on that day.
Okay.
Just happens to coincide with 4th of July weekend, and I think
I mean, I had a 2-week, like, gone, like, not here at all.
So we have two options. If 3 of you are available, we just need a quorum to keep moving. If all of you want to be available, we could certainly make an adjustment to the calendar.
I can be
move it
available
to
remotely.
another-
That's not a problem. I just won't. So I can be available remotely. That's.
Oh, okay,
I just won't be here for a quorum.
understood.
And we need 3 for quorum.
We need 3 for
Which
quorum,
means
so
I
I just
won't
need
be here.
confirmation that my other 3 will be here.
I'll be here.
Yeah, I'll be here.
Okay.
Okay, so
Shares the 13th, the 27th.
okay. Any other comments, questions for Devin?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Mulholland?
No question, just comment. I just want to say that this is refreshing compared to what's been going on in this place for many, many years. Thank you, Devin, and thank you, Madam City Manager, for putting an actual plan together rather than throwing something together that was based on something from previous years. So this is good to see. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Devin. Okay, next we move on to the approval of the agenda. Are there any amendments to the agenda as proposed?
Mayor, I have 2. I would like to, it was inadvertently left off the printed agenda, an additional proclamation for renewal, the state of a local emergency for Hurricane Helene. Hurricane Milton is on the agenda, so I'd ask that we add that into your consent calendar, and you have a copy in front of you for final sign-off if it's approved.
Thank you.
And then the second addition is to remove, again, we had an inadvertent add to the agenda under action item 6D. That is not on this agenda this evening. It will be on April 22nd agenda.
Thank you. Are there any other amendments to the agenda? Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I make a motion to approve the amended April 8, 2025 agenda.
A second?
City Clerk, if you please do a roll call.
Commissioner Robinson,
Yes.
Commissioner Reznicki,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mulholland,
Yes.
Commissioner Marriott,
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we have Hurricane Helene and Milton recovery efforts presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Laura Canary, Community Development Director. So tonight, pretty much the same format, just a couple little add-ins though, a couple additional slides. So we're going to highlight the permits, damage determinations, appeals, then talk about some of the permit processing, historic designations, and then assistance available to the community. So first, looking at a snapshot of the permits to date, there's been 3,658 applications submitted. You can see that we have issued 2,765. There are 67 in review and 235 not in review. As far as our goal of the daily average, we are at 36 currently as our average goal. And then for permits closed, we have 68 closed to date. And then for the daily inspections, the average is 82 inspections a day. For substantial damage and non-substantial damage determinations, as we've been reporting for at least since I've been here, the 2,883 assessments completed, which was close to bringing us to that hopefully almost final point. We did receive the assessments today, the 820 remaining. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some stragglers out there or some that we may still have to go out and do. We are working through the data on our end now to get that input into our system. Just again, the same when we talk about the duplicated and delayed data, that hasn't changed. We're receiving it from different sources, and so we're just doing our best to get it into our system so that then we're able to have a depository of it in one place. If you look at the SD and NSD letters mailed, of those 2,329 have been mailed, 1,512 of those are non-substantially damaged and 817 substantially damaged. Of the 2,329 determinations, 554 total are still pending review or in review, or additional information is needed. So again, all of the numbers, when we're looking at these, one of the things to note as I get to this next slide is that, because this question I think has came up even for me myself, you will never see the numbers on the right, the 672, which represents the appeals approved, and then the 158, those in progress, equal the total number submitted. You can have a denial and then an approval, and so it's almost, we don't want to duplicate the number and count that as two permits, but it's counted into the review aspect of it. Just another reminder, owner-builder applications must be signed in person. And then also, as we have inspectors and contract employees still out in the community, and just a reminder for everyone's safety and security that anyone out in the community should have an ID that looks something like this on the bottom of the screen. If you have any questions or concerns, please call 727-367-2735. This is regarding the elevations required for exterior equipment, because again, this is something that has been coming up, and each community is kind of doing things, it's really interpreted differently as we've learned. But as far as St. Pete Beach requirements, it is 1 foot above the flood zone. So when this matrix that you kind of see on the bottom of the screen is intended to give an example of that. So step 1 is looking at the flood zone and then the LIDAR information if you do not have an elevational certificate. One of the issues is that the LIDAR data that's on Pinellas County GIS is not available to the public, so you can't just go on there and put in your address and find your LIDAR information. So for right now, if you need that information and you don't have an elevational certificate, please email lidar@stpetebeach.org and we can help you with that information. Moving forward, the new software that we have recently got in place that we just did the kickoff actually yesterday is called Forerunner, and that's the software that's going to help us in the future. Hopefully, if we ever need to do substantial damage determinations again in-house, it's going to be a one-stop shop for the software and the assessments. And it also does include the LIDAR application, and that will be available through the public interface. So in time, as soon as we get that up and running and made available to the public, we'll be sure to include that in this update as well. Just don't have it yet. I mentioned this during the last update, but as far as the information that we've received from FEMA, we've received basically that there were 1,781 claims filed. You can see the totals of the building payments, and then I'm sorry that I missed, I deleted it, it said content payments. It was the third column over, and then the grand total. So we received that information from FEMA. We took that information combined with a couple other data source points that we have, which when I go to the next screen, we used that information to send out the notification letters that went out last Friday. Those letters were basically sent to property owners saying that we do not have a permit on file. This is not a perfect, science. As you can see, the approximate 1,000, that doesn't match up to the 1,700 that you saw on the previous screen, because again, some of those individuals probably had a permit. We also, with regard to the 1,000 letters, we have in that correspondence to please send your questions and responses to permits@stpetebeach.org. Just since yesterday, I checked with our permit administrator this afternoon, and we've received about 150 emails just in response, either saying, this is the case, I have a question. So again, we know it's not perfect, and if anyone received the letter in error, please, same thing, either you can ignore it if you know that in fact that you have a permit, but by all means, if you have any questions or concerns, please email us at permits@stpetebeach.org. A reminder that the permit fees are waived until April 22nd, and which is going to bring me to the next point that we kind of talked about a little bit at the last meeting, and I was asked to bring back some information as far as the fee waivers go and where we're at to date. So the finance director has assisted me with this table and can probably answer more specific questions to the revenue projections and whatnot in the table. But the key points are that currently to date, we've waived $3.2 million in permit fees. The projections that you see on the bottom of the screen are, again, using the anticipation of our current staffing needs, like considering the contract employees that we have on board right now, as well as any immediate near future needs that we anticipate. And the year-to-date revenue is just under $375,000, so you can just kind of see how that starts to track out in comparison to what we would have thought we would be at if, per the budget. So the budget, we had anticipated revenues at $1.325 million for the year, so at this point, at about 6 months, we would be at the $662,500, and you can just start to see the trend. And then, of course, with regard to the fee waivers, how that impacts the overall revenue. And what you see on the projected 50% of revenue side, that 1.750510, that's what we anticipate if we were to continue as is and continue the fee waiver, where we would be. And we would be under that $2 million threshold of the budget for the building fund. For historic designations, there's been 48 applications submitted, 38 approved, 7 pending, 7 need additional information, and 3 have withdrawn. For certificates of appropriateness, there's been 15 demolition applications submitted, 13 of those approved, 2 are pending, and the restoration, this is pretty much the same as I reported a couple weeks ago, 3 applications submitted, 2 approved, and 1 has been withdrawn. Going into some of the programs that are available, the Elevate Florida program, there is the application deadline of April 11th. To date, there has been 6,200 applications total for the state, 2,300 in Pinellas County. And if you take it down just a little bit more to our level, 231 of those applications have been from St. Pete Beach. Again, the deadline is April 11th. We do understand that there are individuals that are either maybe contemplating the program or have submitted an application. And we just ask that if you are working with the Elevate program or any other program for that matter, please just reach out to our office and let us know so that we can notate that accordingly. Pinellas County also has the income-eligible hurricane home repair program. This, again, is the one that has the income eligibility requirements and will provide up to $30,000 in grant funding. Again, this is also the one that can be used for some different things, such as your insurance deductible. So just, again, visit pinellas.gov. The URL is on the bottom of the screen for more information about that program. And there is not a deadline yet announced. I do not believe on that program yet. The Recovery Fund, that's the $813 million awarded by the CDBG for disaster recovery funds. There's a community survey that's available on the website. And they also have the survey, a hard copy at the public meetings that they've been having, the in-person meetings. There's a series of public meetings being conducted. The first one was yesterday evening in Lealman, and that was considered the South County public meeting. There's going to be a Mid-County one on April 10th, tomorrow, and then North County on April 24th. They anticipate having the draft action plan presented to the BOCC on May 6th. And then you can also tune in, if you're not unable to make it to a meeting, you can also tune in to the virtual meetings on May 13th or May 15th to see the draft action plan. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Laura. Commissioner Marriott?
Sure. Just a quick question, Laura. On the Elevate Florida slide where you had broken down the number of applicants from St. Pete Beach, there was one under the something about acquisition. And my understanding is that that's a program that, yeah, there we go, acquisition/demolition, that's a program where somebody can sign up to have their property acquired by the municipality. And so has anyone from Elevate Florida talked to anybody in the city about, are we in a position to be acquiring properties? Or are they going to give us money to acquire properties? Or
I haven't received contact, but I imagine based on where they are in the process, they're still evaluating. And then once they get the additional information from the property owner, they would contact us with more details, and then we could take it under consideration with the commission.
Thank you.
I have questions. Can we go back to the elevation, the BFE? And we're specifically talking about any HVAC and as well pool equipment, is that correct? Or just HVAC?
Mechanical equipment.
Mechanical equipment,
Yes.
so we're looking at HVAC. And the question is this new or a repair or a rebuild or all elements? I mean, if I'm coming in and I didn't have storm damage to my HVAC, my compressor outside, does this still apply to it?
No, this is for new construction and replacement caused by flood damage only. And that's a very important point. Thank you.
Okay.
So if you're just replacing it because it's old,
Yep.
and it wasn't damaged during the storm, then you're not required to elevate it.
Correct.
Okay.
So if mine worked after the storm, but it's making a horrible noise, but I just decide I want to replace it, what is that considered?
It was not damaged due to flood damage.
Not damage due to flood. Okay, good to know. Just want to get clarification on that one. And then can we go to the letter? Do you have a sample of the letter that went out to everybody so we could review that?
I do not have that.
Because I've been getting questions from people that have received it, and I think it would be good to go over that at some point so people understand, because there is some items that aren't clear on here. So when it says, sorry, I did not get one yet. Building has damage, no work has been, well, let's go through the categories so everybody knows. So there's some categories on this letter, and one is action on your part is immediately required if you're receiving this letter. Here are the action options for all probable circumstances. If you received no damage is one. Building number 2 is designated historical, or you are in the process of a historical designation. Let's see, and the other ones are building has damage and no work has begun. Building has damage and work is in process without a permit or has been completed without a permit. And under that one, specifically says, apply for a permit with an SISD packet along with any required supporting documents, i.e. plans, product approvals, pictures of work, etc. Typo, their permitting forms and SISD packet may be found at the following link. So if you are in that category and you have done work without a permit, are fees waived for you, or do you have, when you go in to get a permit, what is going to be required of you?
If you come in before
If
April,
you've already done work, okay, yep.
yes, before April 22nd, then you will be able to still take advantage of the fee waiver.
Okay, so very clear.
If you come in after April 22nd, assuming there's no extension, no more fee waiver, and you've started the work, it's not permitted, we will issue the permit, and it'll have the regular permit fee. If you have not came in to obtain a permit, and it has been brought to our attention or notified, and we're aware that there's work going on without a permit, the property owner or contractor has not came in to get a permit, and we issue a stop work order, and at that point, you come in to get a permit, that's when you'll be subject to the 3 times the permit fee.
Okay, so the charges, okay. So again, if you have done work without a permit, and you come in before April 22nd to apply for a permit, your permit fees are waived.
Correct.
Okay.
And also, if you come in voluntarily versus, somehow we find out that you did unpermitted work, we have it called essentially an amnesty program, right? So if you come in self-report, we'll waive the fees before the 22nd. If you do not self-report, then you will be subject to the 3x permit fee. Okay.
Okay, I just want to make it clear, because people are asking me this, and I don't know how to answer this question, so now I do have that. And what is the process for those that have not gotten a permit, or what, let me take that back. What is the process after this initial letter? If you don't hear from people, what is the next step? Because my understanding is this is an outreach letter to find out where people stand. Those that obviously are not shown as having received or applied for any sort of permit.
So we are going to need to make that determination, but one of the things that we've discussed is our goal is just to have compliance, of course, and safe homes, but what we have discussed is if it's after the 22nd, after the fee waiver, and you've started work already, you come in to obtain a permit at that point, again, technically, it's not us catching an enforcement. Again, you're coming forward, wouldn't be subject to the 3 times at that point, regular permit costs. And then as far as can you repeat the rest of the question? Sorry.
I'm just trying to be able to tell people what the process is going to be. And do we know what we're doing? I mean, as far as the process.
So what we've discussed.
Are we going to have people having to take down their walls to show what work that they have done that was unpermitted?
So it really is going to be a property by property, because I don't want to misspeak as far as what we may find at a property as far as work goes in comparison to maybe another property. It may be a different scenario, but one of the things that we've discussed as a team as far as next steps, and there reaches a point where we want to feel very comfortable that between getting an SD determination letter and or the letter that just went out, that at this point we've really as a city done our due diligence of trying to provide that outreach and say, if you have damage, and even if you don't know if it's, but if you still are questioning the 50%, like, we just ask you to come in and we will help you work through that. So if we get to a point where we deem that we have done an adequate amount of outreach and it now becomes, okay, enforcement, then that's when we just need to make a determination if that enforcement looks any different than how we would currently enforce the code. The other thing that we've talked about is that At this point, especially, again, not including any stragglers that may, with this last round of letters that have went out, we feel very comfortable that we have hopefully made contact or attempted to make contact with everyone. One option that we would have would be to do another data poll. Again, hopefully at this point too, we would have it housed in one place. Do another data poll of those properties. If we wanted to focus on those that have been substantially damaged, we could pull the threshold of the properties that have been deemed substantially damaged according to the assessments, and then those that we do not have permits for, and do another round of outreach to those individuals. That's one thing that we discussed.
Okay, so then to be clear, is this letter that went out is all, I'm confused, is it also non-substantially damaged homes got this letter too? That, because they got some form of percentage?
Yes,
So it's right now it's everybody who got a letter?
yes.
It's
Okay.
more than that, because it's
Okay.
also, if you go back to the FEMA slide, right, one of the other ways that we're identifying properties is if you received FEMA funds at your request because you submitted, right, a claim for hurricane damage, and then FEMA issued you funds, FEMA reports those addresses and those individuals to the city. So if you're saying you had a claim, you had damage at the house, but then there's no matching permit with it, right? That's correct,
Yes,
right?
yes,
So
yes.
Okay.
part of those addresses, part of those 1,000 homes is you may not, there could be a scenario where you maybe didn't have a substantial letter, but you did claim FEMA funds. And now you're getting a letter from us that says, hey, looks like you may have had some damage, or at least you had a claim, but there's no matching permit, right? So it could have been a simple thing where maybe you had a little bit of water intrusion in the garage and you lost some contents and FEMA paid you, but you didn't actually have to pull permits because you didn't have any damage inside the house. It could be any number of scenarios, but the point is simply, let's not play ostrich, right? The easiest thing is, let us know what's going on. If you didn't have any damage, then just reply back to the email. So the email says, hey, I didn't have any damage, therefore I don't really need to do anything. And if you've done work and you didn't pull the permits, and even though we've asked you for the last 6 months, every single commission meeting, look, we're waiving permit fees, we're making it as easy as possible for individuals, it'll be a lot more difficult because, again, in the conversations that we've had with other cities who've been through this, Cape Coral, Fort Myers Beach, and some of the other ones, you would be surprised the lengths that they've gone through to find individuals, going to listed homes on Zillow and looking and here's a house that's completely brand new, and yet we have the determination said you had 2 feet, but there was no permits, right? It's a lot easier to deal with it now. And so again, we're trying to make it as easy as possible for everyone to make sure that you have a nice, clean, safe home. And so please, if you've done unpermitted work, now is the time to do it. And for those of you who are still waiting, is that where you were going? So for those of you who are still waiting, we're waiving permit fees for another 2 weeks, right? Even if you're not 100% sure of everything you're going to do, go ahead and submit your permits so that you get them in before the fee waiver deadline.
But I believe you have to have a price on it.
Get as much as you can in, right?
Which brings me to my other question, which would be staging and phasing of permits. So the question on staging or phasing, I'll call it, because nobody likes that word anymore. So staging of your permits, especially this late in the season, so that no permit is left open. And following what you said is opening permits, but opening them in stages. Say I open my HVAC, I open my roof, I open my kitchen permits, all of them separately. And the question is, if I get through the first 2, there appears to be a storm, or I'm worried that I'm not going to get this done in time, can I close that permit out?
Not without the work being completed.
So once a permit is open, the work has to be completed? You can't close it out?
For it to be closed as completed work, you can withdraw.
Withdraw. Okay, withdraw would be the other, okay. So it can be withdrawn. Okay. So that answers a good question there about the withdrawal. Thank you.
Can I ask about the withdrawal, though? Because when you have a placard, you have inspections going on, so you can't withdraw once you've already started inspections, right? You can just say, okay, I'm going to stop, because it's
Right.
an
No, I'm
uncompleted.
just-
You mean like clean placard, nothing
Correct.
on it? Okay.
Correct.
I just want to reiterate that, because someone will say, oh, I'm just withdrawing, and
Right.
I've already had 3 inspections, and I just haven't done my final.
I'm just thinking if you want to get in under the
Yeah.
note, the permit fees waived,
Yeah.
you could open up separate permits, and if you're not getting to the point, you can get some of them done and not be under the stress of a storm coming or potentially coming and close out one of them, the last one that hasn't been touched.
Exactly.
Because I would have figured you would stage it in how you think you're going to get them done anyway. Thank you.
Commissioner Mulholland?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I was making notes as you were speaking, and to be quite candidly, my handwriting is so bad I have difficulty reading it. So my questions are really just to get better educated on things. I think most people that have been paying attention the last several months know that tidal basin created significant problems for us here in the city. And I believe up until tonight's presentation that 100% of the appeals had been approved. And maybe tonight's, I wasn't able to ascertain it as the slide was going by. But is there a danger in the city basically accepting every single appeal? Because we're kind of at 100%, right?
Well, they're
Well, we are at
evaluating them.
100%.
We are, yes. So to date, we have not, when I say none have been denied, I just want to make it clear that it could be denied initially for whatever reason. We need this information, we need you to show us this, and then it then gets approved, or, the appeal goes through. To date, we have not had any of those denials, either which way, stay as a denial. So we're still at, yes, 100% of them have.
And I'm certainly not sitting here saying that for some reason we ought to start saying no because no's not due, but, FEMA's going to look at this. And my question is there a risk that we have not denied a single appeal?
I don't know can't answer that question. What I think that what I can say, though, is that in the meeting that we had with Tidal Basin and FDEM, it was very apparent that we were not the only community that had issues with the data that was received.
I think that's certified. I don't think there's any question of that.
And I think
My only question is it 100% on a large number of appeals? And I'm not asking for an answer. That was spinning through my mind. It has been since I've been seeing 100% appeal approval since, we've been getting these reports in recent weeks. So I'm just going to leave it at that. It just, it's just a concern that on an audit that somehow that's going to make us look like we haven't really been serious about it. And I don't know the answer to that. I hope we have. And I certainly don't want it to go the other way for anybody that's appealed. I just wanted to, ask that question. So we've sent 1,000 letters out to people that there's reason to believe that they have done unpermitted work. That
No.
no.
No. It's reason to believe that they had some damage in the home that may require a permit,
Okay.
either because we have a report and a determination letter, or they filed a claim with FEMA and received money, or are there any other options?
I think flood
Those
insurance.
are or they filed a flood, well, we wouldn't get that data.
I think we do get flood.
I think we also had addresses that don't have permits, but also had substantial damage.
Yes.
So the key to this first outreach is to make contact with everyone, because the goal is that through this FEMA audit, they want to see that we've done our due diligence in rebuilding within the floodplain. And so they want to see people making progress. And if progress is, I'm waiting to see if I'm going to demolish my home and rebuild, I'm waiting to elevate Florida, those are all those answers are okay. So we're really just trying to make contact, and then if you must follow your permitting and building codes for rebuilding. And so that's the third piece, is you have to do permitted work, and we have to confirm that that permitted work occurred.
So it's possible that that number is, and we don't know that number might be 500, it might be 300, that took money and should have gotten a permit.
Correct.
We're just, this is our mechanism. So how much is this going to burden the system so far as approving permits for those that we know have been following the process, as frustrating as that might be?
In talking to the team, I think that two things. I want to go back to your previous point very quickly about the appeals, because I think it's important. The staff is using the information that they know, because I'm sure, as it's been explained, some of it was just like standardized almost, like the input that was put in. But because we know that, we can be aware of that information, but still treat each appeal independently as though it's the first appeal that we've received. So when it's necessary, whether it's looking again at what you can see on your computer or needing to go out to it, we're treating each appeal, independently. Just want to make that clear. And then as far as with about the 1,000 letters, and then we're using a combination of different data points. So we're using the information that we received from FEMA, basically saying that these are the properties that we know received the funding. And then we compared that, we have those properties that we have open permits on. We have that information. Then what we also, to the mayor's point, we didn't just want to reach out to property owners that we thought had the substantial, that were deemed over the 50%, because there may have been some that had less damage, but that a permit is required. So what we sent out was to kind of, I don't want to say to be almost an umbrella of, again, why hence the language in there. If you've received this and this is incorrect, please reach out to us, because we knew that it was not a perfect science, especially considering that the data sources that we're using, you got where I'm going with that. Like, we're trying to marry it up. Moving forward, in talking to the team, it's just taking some more time when looking at the appeals. So I would say that yes, it takes longer. Hence why you see the numbers. The average daily numbers are at half of what the goal is. So they take a little longer, but they, as part of the process and with the new software that we're getting, we're hopeful that at this round and where we're at, like even with this last batch that we just received, as we begin to put that into our new software, it's going to really help us be able to expedite things through the system. So to answer your question, as far as if it's taking more time and more staff and resources to be able to deal with the appeals and process those in comparison to if they were all just a clean permit being pulled. Yes, it is taking more time, but we feel that with the software that we're putting in place, and then of course with having the staff stay in place, that we currently have those contractual employees for the limited duration term, that we'll be able to handle it. But it is something that absolutely it takes longer to process.
And I don't want to say concern, that's probably not the right word, but I'll use that word. It wasn't so much on appeals, because we got dealt a short stick by Tidal Basin. Everybody knows that. I'm more concerned with if we have 300 or 400 homes, and I don't know what the number is, you don't know what the number is, that did unpermitted work when it was clear and obvious. I'm not talking about, replacing a couple shingles, although I know that's supposed to be permitted too. But how's that going to burden the people or slow down the people that play by the rules all along? And that was my concern with that comment. And I don't think you necessarily know the answer. I think it's obvious. It's going to slow it down because you're going to have to devote resources to that. Would that not be correct?
I believe that would be correct.
Thank you. And the last question that I had, when you were talking about waiving permit fees, I wanted to make sure I understood from a dollar perspective. I think you had indicated that you anticipate that we would be left with a $2.6 million reserve by the 22nd of April, and that if we extended them, that reserve might be drawn down to 1.75, or did I misunderstand that?
No, that's correct.
Okay, so we had previously spoken about we wanted to keep a floor on that at $2 million. I think we had a consensus amongst the commission that that was the desire. So we're kind of in limbo there. Are you putting forth any recommendation, or are you just asking for us to, give you another consensus or give you another opinion on how we'd like to process or, proceed with that? Because once again, 22 April, we anticipate that the reserves will be 2.6. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then we anticipate that if we extend that, how long, what date do we hit the 175?
So these projections were based on our fiscal year. So we're looking at, and it just,
September.
yes, and it just so happened that when we started having this discussion, 2 weeks ago, and it, we're at that 6-month mark, so the numbers are a little bit clearer, but not, not perfect, but to show the projections.
So for napkin math, we could probably extend the free permit fees for 2 to 3 months and meet our target of $2 million. Now, a lot's changed since then. I mean, we know we've got infrastructure problems that maybe we didn't even know that we had back then. But from a strictly budget reserve perspective for this particular account, if we extended free permits, and I'm not necessarily advocating for that, if we extended the free permits for 2 or 3 months, we would probably still stay within the floor of $2 million. Just napkin math.
I believe that's correct, and I'd let Devin chime in if she feels otherwise, but she helped me with this.
I also would like to chime in because you mentioned prior, there are some unknowns out of these 1,000 letters. So if 10 people are the only problems we have, that's a very different story than 300. And so then you're going to be seeing me coming in and saying, well, I need now some code enforcement officers, and I've got to ramp up that team. And I might have to ramp up the building official team. And so this is where we're in another unknown space, and we have not put in the projection yet a high volume, poor response from the 1,000 people that we still have outstanding. So I just give you that as a cautionary data point as you consider this, that these again are estimates and they're based on assumptions of all the information we know right today. And Devin, you came on
When you
screen.
look at it, we've waived 3.2 million. We've had roughly 3,200 permits. So figure every permit's worth $1,000. So if it's 10 people, it's $10,000. If it's 300 people, that could be a $300,000 deficit now.
Yeah. And I just wanted to get it out there, Mr. Mayor, for a discussion point. I mean, I'm not pounding the table here saying that we should extend the free permits, but if we get to that point, I wanted a little more information on where the numbers were. So, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I have a question again.
Commissioner Robinson?
The 1,000 letters, is that the total universe of the letters, or is there more to come?
at this point, that is all that we're aware of. As I said, there may be some gaps. There are instances where there may be an individual that owns more than one property. So ideally, they would
But-
receive, so it's not
Close.
perfect. It's not
Close.
perfect, close, and the number, to be exact, was 979 that we sent out on Friday.
There's also the potential of those who had damage, did not file a FEMA claim, did work without a permit. There is a universe out there. I don't know how large it is.
And there's also the universe of somebody getting a letter that actually pulled a permit too. So we have that at both ends of the spectrum. Okay.
If they pulled a permit, they wouldn't have gotten the letter.
I have somebody who did.
Ideally, no, but yes, it could happen.
Commissioner Resnicki?
Is it possible to, in preparation, if we do have a discussion about extending the waiver of the permit fee, of the different types of permit types, right? Because the fee, you're doing a new build, shouldn't be waived, as an example. Or you're upfront, you just started your hurricane repair, you're not having to remove, let's say, maybe possibly a drywall because you're doing an after-the-fact permit. Can we differentiate that so that way maybe if, let's say, we were to come to an agreement to continue the waiver, that the waiver might be for a certain permit type versus just saying we're waiving all permit fees?
I think it already is, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, it already,
Except for these after the fact possible, right? If you get a letter and you've done the work.
I see.
and
So
you know
you're
what I'm
saying-
Because it's 1,000.
yeah,
I'm not saying there's 1,000, but let's just say potentially
yeah,
1,000.
I get what you're saying.
So we're hoping tonight you have that discussion because we won't be back till the 22nd, and absent some direction, it would sunset. You can absolutely set any range of policy you'd like around that fee waiver discussion.
Commissioner Robinson?
Oh, sorry, I still have that on. Is that a question?
So absent any discussion on this sunsets on April 22nd. So now is the time. Commissioner Merritt?
Yeah, so on the, when thinking about whether or not we should continue the waiver of the building fees, I think there's a couple ways to look at it. And the first one that comes to mind for me is that I think for a whole lot of residents, they would be totally happy paying permit fees if it means that things happen quickly. I don't think anybody wants to see a continued waiver of permit fees that results in a reduction of services. And so, so I think that's the first thought I have, is that if permit fees are what is required to maintain or preferably increase our level of service in the building department, I think we've given people a long time to get a waiver. There's a lot of people like myself who still don't quite have it figured out and are working through the process. And so, people like me are going to potentially lose out on a waiver of permit fees. But, compared to it taking months to get a permit, I know I would rather pay a fee and have it happen in weeks, right? And I think most people would probably be in that position. And I think we do need to be mindful of keeping our building reserve, or our building department reserve high. But maybe it would be appropriate to consider a 50% reduction in fees or something like that for a short period of time, a couple of months, as kind of a gradually working our way out of the waiver of fees scenario.
Commissioner Robinson?
I would either agree with waiving the fees for 2 more months or doing a reduction in the fee. I just don't feel that it was a lot of the residents' fault for the delays and everything that happened to them. And it's an unfortunate circumstance, but I just don't think, I think it would be fair to go ahead and give a little bit longer of a time period. Because I know that quite a few people still haven't received some of their SD letters. I know some of my neighbors didn't. And I know other people were waiting on finding out, and just really within the last, 4 weeks was Elevate Florida.
Right.
So that was kind of a delay. So there's been a lot of delays in general.
So we have hurricane season starts June 1st, just so that we're all on the same page, right? The discussion around waiving the permit fees has always revolved around the reserves. So the reserves, for example, we're in the process of hiring 7 additional staff for the building department. And so those 7 individuals, called roughly $500,000 a year, that will come out of the reserves because we did not have it in the budget. So in order for us, to Commissioner Merritt's point, to be able to expedite some of the permitting process, or at least keep those staff on, once FEMA stopped paying for them, that's going to come out of the building reserves. So I would propose that we extend the permit fee waiver until June 1st, start of hurricane season. And from April 22nd, it'll be a 50% waiver rather than a 100% waiver.
Okay.
And that will take us very close to maintaining that $2 million reserve, which will get eaten into once we add the staff.
Mhm.
Yes.
So that would be basically an additional 6 weeks of 50%.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And again, you do not have to wait for that SD letter to submit a permit. You can submit a permit package tomorrow. We can always amend it in the future, right? So there really isn't any reason for anyone to wait any longer. The other thing is, when you look at the tracking for the last couple of months, the last 2 months, we're not seeing, 500 or 1,000 permits being submitted every month. We're seeing maybe 75 or 100 permits. So it's really come down to a trickle. So really, we should be just the last few hundred left. And so please just get those permits in. If it takes longer afterwards to process it, that's fine, but just get it in so we can waive those fees. So that's my proposal.
So conceptually, I like that, Mr. Mayor. I want to make sure, though, I didn't miss something. But isn't it quite possible, as a result of the 1,000 letters going out, that we're going to get another flood of permits, and that the numbers that, as I understood you were explaining it, may get skewed to the negative side from a financial perspective?
I mean, look, there should be an incentive for people to get their permits in as quickly as possible. We've extended it multiple times now. I'm happy eating a little bit into the reserves if we can get people in, process their permits as quickly as possible. If you get them in before, if all 1,000 come in before April 22nd, I would be shocked.
Yeah.
But good. I mean, that'd be great. And if there were actually 1,000 that necessary, I think there's a high likelihood that it's a much smaller number.
Yeah.
Yes, Laura.
Sorry, just one, for clarification, just when we projected the total expenditures, when we had, if you can pull up the presentation, please, the 1.713,852, that did include the contractual employees. Just wanted to make that clarification.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Good.
So I'm seeing a lot of head nodding. I just want to repeat what's on the floor, and if I get consensus, I can bring it back in a resolution that from April 23rd to June 1st, there will be a 50% fee waiver.
Yes.
Okay,
For
For
permit.
hurricane repair, yeah.
for the same
Yeah.
criteria we're currently using. So we'll bring that by resolution on the 22nd.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any further comments on this topic? Next, we have audience comments. City Clerk, do we have any general audience comments?
John Kurzman.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
John Kurzman, BE Honda Way South. So I'll just start with this topic. First is I really want to thank everyone involved for what they're doing here, because this is really a nice approach for how to address the people that haven't done anything first. As you recall, I'm also one of the people that got the code enforcement letter earlier, which gave me until February, and now the new deadline, I think, is April 12th. So I just want to make sure that that's being addressed and pushed aside, because obviously that, this is a much better approach. Then the next thing is I heard mention of Forerunner. Forerunner is a great site that the state has put together, I believe. It has all the elevation certificates on it. It has, I think we just heard mention of the LiDAR. But this is also the site, if you can switch my screen, this is also the site that I wrote to Mr. Ray about. So just to give you perspective, this is June of 23 that
Get the overhead.
Yeah. This is the beginning of the center. But in June of 23, can we go to overhead? Yeah, there we go. And zoom in a lot. It's a little screen, it's on my phone. But in June of 23, I flagged that the Forerunner site has many properties that, even though they went from AE11 to AE10, show on the Forerunner site as velocity 13. That's a big error. And it has a button on the Forerunner site that says, click here if you want to get something corrected. I clicked there in June of 23, and it said, oh, well, we actually can't correct anything. They sent me an email, and the email came from the state floodplain manager, management, and they said only your floodplain administrator of your city can do that. So, we worked. I've been through a couple of floodplain administrators, or acting floodplain administrators, and a couple of acting city managers, or like that manager, and then the next city manager, and then by the time the next city manager came in, we really were up to our armpits in floodwaters. But I think it's a priority, because I've heard stories of people's insurance getting the wrong rates, because some insurance companies, I believe, look at the state site for your elevation certificate and then look for your property, see velocity 13, and then I actually said to my neighbor, oh, that happened to you, your rates went up like that? Then they just reapplied, different agent, same insurance company, and got a much better rate. So this is a problem, and it may help the city to be rated better. And it's not just the fact that the site uses, if any part of your property extends out of the zone, it uses the highest zone. It actually appears that we're missing a line, because it goes even to properties that are not even on the water. It's like they think velocity 13 just sweeps right across our peninsula. So we've got a whole list of ones that I just checked locally in my peninsula, but it also happens at Palm Point. It also happens at Bella Vista. There's a whole bunch of the city that's miscategorized on Forerunner. And I really hope really think it needs to get fixed. And maybe will help our rating overall and counteracts other things that are happening. And now, lastly, as a beach steward, I just wanted to say that for the minutes, I noticed that, and it caught my ear, because at the last meeting, the city manager mentioned that she wanted a workshop for the noise ordinance and the freebie and the beach ordinance. And the beach ordinance caught my ear, and I think these workshops, and I'm speaking for myself by saying that I think these workshops are terrific, and I was looking forward to that happening, but when I was reading the minutes, it only mentioned the freebie and the noise ordinance, so I just wanted to flag that I believe it was mentioned that the beach ordinance was the target too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Claudine Reese. Deborah Scheckner.
If you please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Deborah Scheckner, Bocasia Isle Drive in St. Pete Beach. I was looking at the city's mission statement and vision statement recently. So the mission statement to ensure an optimal quality of life for its community and protection of our beaches, family-friendly environment, and be respectful of its history, meaning St. Pete Beach history. The vision statement says maintaining its distinct sense of community values, of fostering an environment of innovation, resiliency, sustainability, and inspiration. And I go back to family-friendly environment because that has been something St. Pete Beach has been known for since there was a St. Pete Beach. And even before there was a St. Pete Beach, when we had small communities. I think maybe we want to take a look at the mission statement again and our vision statement and make it very clear. It doesn't say anything about hotels, and that's good because I don't think they're part of our mission statement. That would be maybe something totally separate. And I think our city can do a better job. And I think that those of you up there might have some really good ideas and we can change this. There's also a value statement, and I'm not sure if we have one of those or not. And that has to do not only with residents, but also people who work with and for us. And it's important to know for our staff that we do value them, but it's also a way to make sure that they are valued. And going back to Tidal Basin, I don't know if the city manager has written or contacted the state or the county about all the issues that we've had with this. And so maybe they can reimburse us for all that extra time, energy, data collection, duplicates, and letters not going out. And I personally believe the county owes us that money, and we should get it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any other cards.
Thank you. We had a meeting that ran into this meeting with a 2-minute break in between. Would the commission be opposed to taking a 12-minute recess before we start getting into action items?
I'd appreciate it.
Okay. We will come back. Let's make it 7:40. Call it 15 minutes. 7:40 sharp. Thank you. Next, we have consent items. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Resnicki?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mulholland?
Yes.
Commissioner Marriott?
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson?
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we have action items. After each, usually the first meeting after the elections in March, we usually elect a new vice mayor. And then we also look at appointments to outside agencies, boards and committees and so on. And so we'll start with the first one, which is the election of a vice mayor. Is there a motion or is there a nomination?
I would like to nominate Commissioner Marriott.
Okay, are there any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Mulholland. I thought he did a great job, has been doing a great job.
Okay. In that case, we will open it for discussion.
I think it's probably important, Mr. Mayor. As most people know, I probably will be leaving, not for certainty, but I will likely be leaving the city sometime in the coming months. I anticipate giving a notice. I don't plan on showing up here and quitting last minute, but it is possible that I will be leaving. So I think the commission should consider that. If the commission wanted me to continue to serve as vice mayor, I certainly would, but I want to be totally transparent that, there's a possibility that I'll be leaving at some point with a reasonable notice.
Thank you. Comments? Are there any audience comments?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion?
I'll motion to appoint Commissioner Marriott, if she accepts, as vice mayor.
I would be honored, thank you. And I guess, am I allowed to second that motion? Yep. Okay.
Vice Mayor Mulholland?
Well, she didn't actually, she asked if she is allowed.
I thought you said.
Oh, well, then I do second it. Sorry. Then yes, I second.
Vice Mayor Mulholland?
Yes.
Commissioner Marriott?
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Resnicki?
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Next, we have appointments to the advisory boards and committees. I think what we've done in the past is commissioners have submitted their, if they had any changes to the city clerk's office by the next commission meeting. So if you have anyone that, if you have somebody today that you want to substitute, take out, whatever, we can certainly do it. But it doesn't really require the commission's approval. That's at the discretion of the individual commissioners. And so we can do it now if you want, or if you just want to send the city clerk an email.
Correct. If you desire to make a change, if you don't, that's fine too. Thank you.
Can I,
Does anybody want to make any announcements for changes?
I wanted to just bring something up that I had discussed previously, but about sunsetting the library committee, because the library is doing a fantastic job by themselves. The library committee meets twice a year, and there's also the Friends of the Library. And there's very limited scope on the library committee itself. And like I said, the library that scope is really to do programs, and the library is doing their own programs, and they're doing a fantastic job of doing those and advertising them and getting them out there.
Okay, maybe we can have that as a discussion item at a future commission meeting where we,
Okay.
okay. Appointments to outside agencies is next.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
not to interrupt you, and I know you've already moved on, but I'm not making any changes to my appointments, but I would like to go ahead and renominate all the people that are representing my district for their positions, just to publicly say their names, to show a little bit of appreciation for them, if you don't mind, sir.
Sure.
So I'll be renominating the following individuals for Board of Adjustment: Dan Small; for the Planning Board, Terry Grocott; for the Historic Preservation Board, Daniel Daschel; for the Beach Stewardship, Dan Roethensberger; for Finance and Budget Review, Kathy English; for Parks and Recreation, Ken Gordon; and for the Library Advisory Board, Shelley Newhoff. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Okay, so next, 6C, appointments to outside agencies. Does anybody want to switch any boards that they're on, or are any commissioners? Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask for one, because I mean, again, it's an opportunity, I guess, to participate in a different one from prior. I did want to continue with the Florida League of Cities, and I did want to participate in the Tampa Bay Regional Planning, because I had asked before, but we kind of all shuffled around trying to figure that out, if that's possible.
So then somebody else would have to take the Pinellas County Flood Insurance Committee?
Well, I can stay there if I know that was one.
Well, we should probably have another primary, and then if you want to stay on as the alternate.
Oh, you mean to keep it as two? Okay, yep, gotcha.
So does anybody want the Pinellas County Flood Insurance Committee?
I'll do it. Do the flood.
Okay,
And then I'll switch the alternate then for that one. Is that what, okay.
okay.
I am so sorry. If you could speak up, I missed that.
That I would be the alternate as opposed to the representative.
For
Commissioner Robinson would do the
For
flood insurance. Yeah.
They'll just switch spots, and then Commissioner Mulholland, do you have any objections to vacating the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council?
Wherever you want me, Mr. Mayor.
All right, sounds good. Any other requests or recommendations?
I think historically, the vice mayor has been your alternate on the Big C.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if we want to make that switch as well.
Yeah, that usually just happens.
Just happens,
automatically.
okay.
Yep.
Got it.
Okay. Any other changes? Okay,
Can I read them to make sure I got them right?
certainly.
For the Big C, it would be Mayor Petrilla and Vice Mayor Marriott as alternate. Florida League of Cities would remain Commissioner Resnicki and Mayor Petrilla as alternate. MCPC would remain Mayor Petrilla and Commissioner Mulholland as an alternate. And then the Insurance Commission would be Commissioner Robinson as the primary and Commissioner Resnicki as the alternate. And then SLC would be Commissioner or Vice Mayor Marriott as primary, Commissioner Resnicki as alternate. And then Tampa Bay Regional Planning would be Commissioner Resnicki as the primary and Commissioner Robinson as alternate.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, could we formalize it with a motion and a second, and I will vote for the minutes?
Certainly. Is there a motion to adopt the appointments as amended?
I move to adopt the appointments as amended.
Second.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Marriott,
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson,
Yes.
Commissioner Resnicki,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulholland,
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we have action item 6E, authorize the city manager to enter into a federal lobbyist agreement. City manager?
Thank you, Mayor and City Commission. If I could do a presentation on both item E and F and then take separate action, as they're both related to lobbying on behalf of the city. In January of this year, I was directed by the City Commission to undertake an RFP process for a federal lobbyist. The city went through its normal purchasing procedures. We received 4 respondents, and Becker was the leading contender through a committee-based review. They are offering their services at $48,000 per year. We have a 2-year contract in place for you to consider based on the level of damage in the community and lobbying that will be required at the federal level with our relationship with FEMA and other federal agencies. I do recommend that you consider the 2-year contract, and during that time period, establish metrics and reporting to determine the return on investment. The second lobbying firm is Shoemaker Advisors. They have been the state lobbyist for several years for the city of St. Pete Beach. Our lead lobbyist changed at about the same time I was hired, and is now Jim Taylor. He has been representing us, and we've been working with him. We also put the state lobbying contract out for a bid to go through the RFP process and make a recommendation. We are recommending to renew the contract with Shoemaker Advisors, and that is $60,000 per year for a 3-year contract. So with that, I can take any questions and consider a motion on both individually.
Thank you, City Manager. Commissioners, questions, comments?
Did I hear you, oh, sorry. Did I hear you say that the state lobbyist went out to bid as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Resnicki?
Just a follow-up question. I don't know if Francis, if you were able to find out whether other municipalities also have federal lobbyists, or if anybody out there, has contracts, and if even, and I didn't ask you this before, but if they were successful, on that return on investment.
So for federal, it's very common for mid to large sized cities to have a federal lobbyist. Given the size of our city, under normal circumstances, I would not have recommended we move into this position, but considering how much we will need to lean on the federal government for recovery, I think it's worth testing the ROI on this one for the next few years. And every city I've worked for that has a federal lobbyist ends up showing you get more money than you spend on lobbying, and because we're so far removed from federal, it usually takes a lobbyist to get yourself in a good position to receive any significant grants. And I'll just add, on the federal side, typically you don't want to consider a grant, usually less than about $1 million, because they are very labor intensive to manage, similar to what you're seeing with FEMA grants.
Thank you.
Good old bureaucracy.
There's no free lunch.
Definitely not there.
Commissioner Robinson, did you have a follow-up
Oh,
question?
I'm sorry.
Do we have any audience comments?
We do. Deborah Scheckner.
Thank you. If you please state your name and address for the record.
Deborah Scheckner, Bocaciega Isle in St. Pete Beach. I was probably going in the direction of one of the commissioners. Is there a way to share a lobbyist with the Treasure Island or one of the other cities to bring the cost down, but at the same time, I wouldn't want our city to lose out on any monies? And how much have we gotten from, I think we've only had people for the state, and that, so I'm wondering how much have we gotten? And with all the raucous in Washington, D.C., do we expect any money to come our way through all of that morass and difficulty? Or do they have connections within the government that can maybe circumvent some of the, I'm going to just use the word circus. So I just have those two questions. Thank you.
City Manager, did you want to elaborate on the federal one and where the funding for that will come from?
Yes, so the plan for the federal lobbyists this year is this fiscal year, I will absorb it through salary savings that we're achieving in the city manager's office budget. And then for next fiscal year, we'll roll it into the budget proposal and evaluate it under the broader review of the fiscal year 26 budget. So I'm not asking for a budget amendment at this time for the remainder of this fiscal year.
And then just to come back to what you said a few minutes ago, is you're anticipating grants in excess of $1 million? But let me rephrase it. You said it's not worth our time to consider grants in less than $1 million.
Correct.
Which then kind of lends itself to the question, what we're looking from them is large grants,
Yes.
infrastructure, and so on.
And the lobbyist really helps us seek how we can align our needs with the policy direction of the administration in Washington. And so as soon as, and they have a better pulse on what's happening day to day, clearly they're there. And so they can help us position a project request. And typically you'll be very focused on your project request to try to get a specific project that aligns with their policies approved.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to authorize the city manager to enter into a federal lobbyist agreement with Becker in the amount of $48,000 per year for 2-year contract term.
Second.
City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Robinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Resnicki?
Yes.
Commissioner Mulholland?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Marriott?
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla?
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Is there another motion?
I motion to authorize the city manager to enter into an agreement in the amount of $5,000 per month with Shoemaker Advisors to conduct the state lobbying activities on behalf of the city of St. Pete Beach.
Second.
City Clerk, if you please.
Commissioner Resnicki?
Yes.
Commissioner Mulholland?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Marriott?
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson?
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla?
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Next, we have items for discussion. So we have a report on the city clerk vacancy. We had a first round of interviews, and the commission requested of the city manager and our recruiting firm to conduct a second round of candidates, which we had the pleasure of interviewing last week. City manager?
Thank you, Mayor and Commission. So at the direction of the commission, we did set up a second round of interviews with 2 very qualified candidates. We followed the same process as we did with the first round of candidates that involved interviews with the leadership team, which is made up of all the directors and our communications manager, as well as the city clerk's office to interview the candidates. And then they also individually interviewed with each of you prior to this evening. As part of the process, I asked the leadership team in the city clerk's office to rank the candidates. And tonight I wanted to report our ranking and then ask that you all individually share your rankings, and then we can move into a discussion. So with that, our team had ranked Renee Rose as our #1 candidate and Cassandra Kilgore as our #2 candidate.
Thank you, city managers. Sorry, city manager. We will open it for discussion from the commission at this point. Commissioners, thoughts, comments? Or we can do similar what we did with the city manager when we went to the interview process. If you wanted to just go down the line and name your #1 candidate and #2 candidate, we can do that as well. And then would you like to proceed that way?
Yes, and the goal tonight is seeking direction to, if you have a preferred candidate, to direct me to work on negotiating a compensation package, and also provide me your backup candidate so that I already have authority to move through the recruitment process with multiple individuals.
Okay, let's start with District 1.
Sure. So I thought that both of the candidates that we interviewed last week were quite impressive, and between the two, I would have had a very difficult time picking a favorite. And so based on the fact that that the leadership team is the one who's going to be having to work very closely with the person that we hire on a regular basis, I will follow their recommendations of Renee as my first choice and Cassandra as my second.
Okay. Commissioner Robinson?
I felt the same. I felt they were both very qualified, a little bit in different areas. I like the fact that Renee had her CMC certification, but not as much experience in Florida as, say, Cassandra did or does. So it would be a very tight race on those two, I believe. I like the fact that Cassandra had some more training or was able to give training, Sunshine Law, and conducted meetings as well. It's tough, but I would say the same thing. I think that if the leadership team feels, because for me, those two are so tight, that if they felt they're the ones that are going to have to work right with them. So I would say Renee number 1 and Cassandra number 2.
Thank you, Commissioner Robinson. Commissioner Reznicki?
Yep. My number 1 is definitely Renee, and I do think she has way more experience than the other candidates. She comes from originally Kansas, municipality larger than this city. There was an error in the resume, so I don't know if everyone noticed, but she actually did have over a year experience in the state of Florida. And I only know because I asked, thinking at the beginning that she only had 3 months experience, but actually since 2023. Has conducted meetings as the city clerk. So definitely my number 1. Backup being Cassandra.
Thank you. Commissioner Mulholland?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It actually wasn't very close for me. I'll give a ranking of 3. Renee is head and shoulders, in my opinion, the best option. I did have some concerns about her. My very first question to her was, you've only been in your present position for 14 months. That automatically, to me, coming from my background, raises red flags. She absolutely satisfied my concerns about that. So that was my very first question for her. Another concern that I had with her, and I still have with her, I believe she's upwardly mobile, which is a good thing. I know in my past life, when I was hiring for key positions, I would always hope that the hire would be, 1, successful, and 2, that key positions, that they would be around for at least 10 plus years. I am not convinced that she will be here for 10 plus years. I think she's upwardly mobile enough. I think she's got enough charisma and capabilities and abilities that, as I told her, what's to make me think that in 2 years you don't want to be the clerk of Clearwater or St. Petersburg? Those are all concerns of mine with her. She allayed some of those, so I do believe, this is just my gut instinct, I do believe that there's a reasonable chance that she'll be here for at least 5 years. I'm not sure she'll be here for 10 years. But she is far and away, in my opinion, the best option that we have for this position. My number 2 was Cassandra, and my number 3 was Jessica. But as I say, Renee was head and shoulders above anybody, and that includes the first tranche of people that we interviewed. I feel she's head and shoulders above everyone. And I believe that if she were to accept the position, that she would serve the city well, maybe not as long as we'd like her to, but maybe she will. We'll see. But that's my position, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Well, it sounds like I'm going to have a very tough phone call tomorrow morning, as her current mayor is I wouldn't just say a friend, I would say a good friend. So on that side, and unfortunately, I represent the city of St. Pete Beach, and so I have to be selfish in that respect, and I'm sure he will understand and respect that decision. So I think, city manager, I think you have consensus from the commission as far as a candidate, and we would like for you to proceed with moving forward with negotiating, presenting an offer and negotiating a contract.
Thank you.
All right, next we move on to reports. City clerk.
So I placed before you the doodle poll results for the priority work session, and then at the bottom of that form, I put 4 additional dates that the city manager added as perhaps 2 of those dates, 2 days in a row, for June 4th and 5th, or June 17th and 18th. So if you can make a decision perhaps tonight, we can go ahead and get that calendared, since we had some difficulty.
I would be available for any of the new dates, the 2 day in a row, either of the 2 day in a row groupings would work for me.
Can I get a clarification? Are we saying that we're going to have we want 2 back-to-back meetings, is what we're saying?
The dates on the bottom are 2 back-to-backs. The beginning ones that we put out were just single meetings.
That were longer versus the shorter.
The shorter,
Yeah.
okay. I definitely cannot make the 4th. The 5th, I can. Let me double check something. As well as 17 and 18.
Okay, so are there any other conflicts with 17 and 18?
It's June 17th. I have none.
Ginny, you have new dates?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
That is all from me, thank you.
Thank you. City manager?
Nothing to report.
Thank you. City attorney?
Nothing this evening.
Okay, District 4?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, a couple things. I've started to receive occasional requests from the Paso Grill residents about the alley trash pickup service. So far, and this continues to be the case, my guidance has been that we had left this off a few days before Helene hit, and that the desire was for the community, that we had a community group that was going to do a survey of the alleys and provide some type of recommendations that I could bring forth to the city. I would say that that position remains, that if the community group is prepared to bring forward a audit of their review of the alleys, I will happily advocate for that, assuming I believe that it is logical and makes sense. So for those that have been reaching out about that, that's the status of that at this point. And then there's been a lot of concern about the dunes and the damaged wall from First to 8th Avenue as it relates to sand potentially washing over and blowing over into the rest of Paso Grill from 8th or First to 8th. I sent a detailed explanation from the head of public service. Are we calling it public service now or public works still, Madam City Manager?
Public services.
Public services. So I submitted a detailed explanation with estimates, et cetera, to the head of the Paso Grill Community Association. I have recently declared her as my point of contact with these issues. So anytime I get information that I think is important, I pass it along to her, and then she has a database to pass it along to the rest of the community. So I submitted that information that I received from Public Services last week, and I am hopeful that that has made its way down to the residents in Paso Grill. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. District 3?
Yes, thank you. Just a reminder for 2 community meetings, April 10th, Bella Vista neighborhood meeting at 7 p.m., so that's this week. April 24th, the Don Cesar at 6 p.m. to discuss resiliency, so specific to the topic of resiliency in the neighborhood. And then I know I am going to reach out, and I apologize for the neighborhoods of Lido, Boca Ciega, and all the neighboring associations, but I was very, very, very sick, and there was no way I can go. But I will make sure that we somehow coordinate a meeting, hopefully in April, that I'll also spread somehow to everybody to know that location. So thank you.
Thank you. District 2?
I don't really have anything to announce other than my looking to do my forthcoming library hours. I need to get with Vicenta on that, and I will announce those online.
Thank you. District 1?
Yes, nothing of note other than I am having a Beer with a Commissioner event next Monday, the 14th at Masteries Brewing in District 1. No purchase or drinking of beer is required. They just generously offer up their space. So next Monday, the 14th from 6 to 8 p.m.
Thank you. All right, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.